I always knew my mother-in-law was manipulative, but I never expected her to try to steal my grandmother's house right from under me. Not on a sunny Tuesday morning, while I was still in my coffee-stained pajamas, dealing with a mountain of moving boxes. My name is Sophia, and I've spent the last decade trying to navigate life with Ramona Murphy, the queen of passive-aggressive warfare. Usually, she limits herself to snide comments about my cooking or subtle digs about when Andrew and I will finally give her grandchildren. But today, she crossed a line that would change everything. The doorbell rang just as I was taping up another box of my grandmother Martina's old photos. Through the peephole, I saw Ramona's perfectly coiffed silver hair and Andrew's uncomfortable expression. My stomach dropped. "Sophia, darling." Ramona's saccharine voice filled the entryway as I opened the door. She breezed past me, designer handbag swinging, while Andrew shuffled in behind her, avoiding my eyes. "We need to have a little chat about the house." I followed them into what used to be my grandmother's living room, now a maze of cardboard boxes and bubble wrap. "What about the house?" Ramona perched on the edge of the floral armchair, like she was afraid of catching dust. "Well, dear, Andrew and I have been talking, and we think it would be best if you signed the house over to the family trust." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "The family trust," she repeated slowly, as if I were a child. "You see, this house has been in the Murphy family for generations. It's only right that it stays protected under proper management." Andrew shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. "Mom thinks, I think," Ramona cut in, pulling papers from her designer bag, "that you're simply not equipped to handle a property of this significance. The taxes alone." "The house belonged to my grandmother," I interrupted, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "She left it to me in her will." Ramona's perfectly lined lips curved into a condescending smile. "Darling, we all know Martina wasn't in her right mind toward the end. Besides, there are certain historical aspects of this property that you couldn't possibly understand." "Mom," Andrew started, but she silenced him with a look. "I've already had the papers drawn up," Ramona continued, sliding them across the coffee table. "It's really quite simple. You sign here, and we'll ensure the house stays in proper care. We could even let you and Andrew continue living here, under the right conditions, of course." I picked up the papers, scanning the legal jargon, while my mind raced. This was the house where I'd spent every summer as a child, where my grandmother had taught me to bake empanadas and told me stories of our family's history. Now Ramona wanted to take it all away with a few strokes of a pen. "No," I said quietly. "I beg your pardon." I said no. I stood up, papers clutched in my hand. "This is my house now. Grandmother left it to me, legally and intentionally." Ramona's face hardened. "Sophia, don't be difficult. You know this is for the best. Andrew, tell her." I turned to my husband, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the sofa cushions. "Andrew." He ran a hand through his hair. "Maybe we should just discuss this." "There's nothing to discuss," I said, ripping the papers in half. "The house is mine. End of story." Ramona stood up, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "You ungrateful little," she caught herself, smoothing her blazer. "Very well. If that's how you want to play this, remember, you brought it on yourself. Come along, Andrew." Andrew hesitated, looking between us before following his mother to the door. As they left, Ramona turned back with a snake smile. "Oh, and Sophia, do give my regards to Finn. I hear he's quite the accomplished lawyer these days." The door closed behind them, and I sank onto the sofa, my hands shaking. How did she know about Finn? More importantly, what did she know about the house that made her so desperate to control it? I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message to Finn. "Remember that favor you owe me? I need your help. It's about the house." Looking around at my grandmother's home, my home, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Ramona Murphy had no idea what she'd just started, and she definitely didn't know about the document I'd found hidden in the attic last week, the one that would turn her whole world upside down. Game on, Ramona, game on. The attic was exactly as I'd left it a week ago, dusty, dim, and full of secrets. I clicked on my phone's flashlight and made my way to the old steamer trunk where I'd made my discovery. Finn's footsteps creaked on the wooden boards behind me. You know, when you texted me about urgent legal help, I didn't expect to be crawling through cobwebs at 8 a.m. Trust me, this is worth it. I pulled out the leather-bound folder I'd found during my initial cleanup. Remember how Ramona tried to claim grandmother wasn't in her right mind when she wrote the will? Yeah, classic move. Trying to invalidate the testament based on mental capacity. I handed him the folder. Well, look what I found. Finn's eyes widened as he read through the documents. Holy shit, Sophia. This is ironclad. Your grandmother didn't just leave you the house. She documented everything. Medical evaluations proving her mental competency. Detailed explanations of her decisions. He whistled. Even proof of ownership going back 3 generations. Keep reading, I said, perching on an old rocking chair. It gets better. Better how? He flipped through more pages, then stopped. Wait, this can't be right. Oh, it's right. I couldn't help but smile. The house never belonged to the Murphy family. Grandmother bought it outright in 1975, long before she even knew the Murphys existed. Finn ran a hand through his hair. So Ramona's whole claim about family heritage is complete bullshit. I stood up and started pacing. But here's what I don't get. Why is she so desperate to control this place? What does she know that we don't? My phone buzzed. A text from Ramona. Thinking about our chat yesterday. You might want to reconsider your position before things get complicated. I showed Finn the message. See what I'm dealing with? Classic intimidation tactic. He was still examining the documents. But with these papers, she doesn't have a legal leg to stand on. Your grandmother was thorough. Almost like she knew this might happen. A memory surfaced. Grandmother sitting in her garden, telling me stories while we planted tomatoes. Sophia, mi amor, she'd said. Sometimes the strongest walls are built with paper, not stone. Finn, I said slowly, help me move this trunk. Together, we pushed the heavy chest aside, revealing a loose floorboard underneath. My heart pounding, I pried it up with a screwdriver from my pocket. How did you know that was there? Finn asked. Grandmother's stories always had hidden meanings. She used to say the house kept secrets in its bones. I reached into the cavity and pulled out a manila envelope, yellowed with age. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. They showed the house in various stages of renovation, but one in particular caught my eye. It showed a much younger Ramona standing in front of the house, arm in arm with my grandmother. They were smiling, but something about their posture seemed tense. Look at the date. Finn pointed to the back of the photo. 1985, 10 years after your grandmother bought the place, and 5 years before she met my grandfather. I sat back on my heels, mind racing. They knew each other. All this time, Ramona acted like grandmother was just her son's mother-in-law, but they had history. Finn was already typing on his phone. I can do some digging, see what connections I can find. But Sophia, be careful. If Ramona's willing to lie about the house's ownership, who knows what else she's hiding? My phone buzzed again. Another text from Ramona. Having fun in the attic, dear. Some things are better left buried in the past. I felt a chill run down my spine. She's watching the house. Finn moved to the small attic window. Black SUV across the street. Tinted windows. Perfect. I gathered up all the documents, including the photos. Let's give her something to really worry about. What are you planning? I smiled, channeling a bit of Ramona's snake-like confidence. I'm going to host a family dinner. All the Murphys, including Hallie. She's always hated her mother's manipulative games. Time to put all the cards on the table. That's either brilliant or insane, Finn said, helping me up. Want me there as your lawyer? No, but I want you on standby. Something tells me we're just scratching the surface of whatever Ramona's hiding. As we headed downstairs, I took one last look at the photo. My grandmother and Ramona, frozen in time, holding on to a secret that was about to break free. Whatever complicated history lay between them, one thing was clear. This house held answers, and I was going to find them all. First, though, I had a dinner party to plan. The kitchen still smelled like my grandmother's spices as I chopped vegetables for dinner. Andrew hadn't come home last night, probably hiding at his mother's house, avoiding the inevitable confrontation. 10 years of marriage, and he still couldn't stand up to Ramona. The doorbell rang, and I wiped my hands on a dish towel. Hallie stood on the porch, holding a bottle of wine and wearing her trademark worried expression. "I came as soon as I got your message," she said, stepping inside. "Is it true? Mom's trying to take the house?" I led her to the kitchen, where I poured us each a glass. "Oh, it's worse than that. Look at this." I showed her the old photograph of Ramona and my grandmother. "Holy shit," Hallie nearly dropped her glass. "I've never seen Mom look so young or happy." She squinted at the image. "What's that building in the background?" "That's the interesting part." I pulled out my laptop, showing her the blueprints I'd found online. "This house used to be a women's shelter in the 70s. Grandmother ran it before it became a private residence." Hallie's eyes widened. "Mom never mentioned that." "She never mentions a lot of things." I returned to chopping vegetables. "But here's what I'm thinking. What if we restored it to its original purpose? Not exactly a shelter, but a community center for women. Job training, counseling, childcare." "Mom would lose her mind," Hallie said. But she was smiling. "I love it. Need any help?" "Actually, yes. I've got a friend coming over, Paisley. She's an architect. We're meeting with a community leader named Iris to discuss possibilities. Want to join?" Before Hallie could answer, we heard the front door open. Andrew's voice drifted in. "Sophia, you home?" "In the kitchen," I called out, exchanging looks with Hallie. Andrew walked in, looking exhausted. He stopped short when he saw his sister. "Hal, what are you doing here?" "Supporting my sister-in-law," she said pointedly. "You know, the one whose house Mom's trying to steal?" "It's not like that," Andrew started, but I cut him off. "Then what is it like, Andrew? Because from where I'm standing, you're letting your mother bulldoze over our marriage. Again." He slumped into a kitchen chair. "You don't understand. She's not herself lately, ever since she found out about your plans for the house." "What plans?" I interrupted. I hadn't told anyone about the community center idea until just now. Andrew's face went pale. I mean, she's having us watched," Hallie realized. "That's how she knows everything." God, this is classic Mom. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Paisley and Iris, both looking professional and excited. I made introductions, trying to ignore Andrew's uncomfortable shifting. "The bones of this place are perfect," Paisley said, spreading out preliminary sketches on the kitchen table. "We could easily convert the east wing into classrooms, add a daycare center in the back garden. The community would embrace this," Iris added. "We've needed something like this for years. I've already got a list of potential donors and volunteers." I was about to respond when I heard Andrew's phone buzz. He checked it, then stood up abruptly. "I have to go." "Let me guess," I said coldly. "Your mother needs you. Sophia, please." "No, you know what? Go. But first, let me show you something." I pulled out the old photograph. "Look familiar? That's your mother with my grandmother, right here, in 1985. Care to explain why she pretended not to know anything about this place's history?" Andrew stared at the photo, confusion written across his face. This doesn't make sense." From the driveway, a car horn honked. Andrew looked torn. "You should go," I said quietly. "Your mother's waiting." After he left, Hallie squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry. He's always been like this, too afraid to rock the boat." Well, I'm done tiptoeing around Ramona's feelings. I turned back to Paisley and Iris. "Let's make this happen. How fast can we get started?" As they discussed permits and renovations, I heard voices outside. Through the kitchen window, I could see Andrew and Ramona in her car, arguing. Ramona's face was red with anger as she gestured wildly at the house. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You have no idea what you're getting into. Some secrets should stay buried." I showed it to Hallie, who shook her head. "Mom's really losing it." No, I said, watching Ramona's car pull away. She's scared, and scared people do desperate things. So what's our next move? Hallie asked. I smiled, thinking of all the documents safely stored at Finn's office. We're going to have that family dinner, and this time, everyone's cards will be on the table. The dinner invitations went out, and the responses came back almost immediately. Even Ramona accepted, her reply dripping with false politeness. But first, I needed to have a conversation with my husband. I found Andrew in his home office, staring at his laptop. We need to talk. He closed the screen. About the dinner party. About everything. I sat across from him. I heard you on the phone with your mother last night. You're helping her look for legal loopholes to contest the will. His face fell. You weren't supposed to hear that. Clearly. Just like I wasn't supposed to hear you tell her about my plans for the community center. I leaned forward. What happened to us, Andrew? When did you become her puppet? That's not fair. No, what's not fair is watching my husband conspire with his mother to steal my inheritance. I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made, his voice, clear as day, discussing property laws with Ramona. Andrew's face went white. You recorded me? I learned from the best. Your mother's been having me watched, so I figured turnabout is fair play. I stood up and paced the room. But here's what I don't understand. Why? Why is this house so important to her? He ran his hands through his hair. I don't know. She won't tell me everything. But she gets this look in her eyes when she talks about it. Like she's terrified of something. Then maybe it's time we found out what that something is. I handed him the old photograph. Your mother knew my grandmother long before we met. They worked together here when it was a women's shelter. Andrew studied the photo. Mom never mentioned this, because she's hiding something big enough to make her want to destroy our marriage over it. His head snapped up. She's not destroying our marriage. Really? I laughed bitterly. When's the last time you slept in our bed instead of the guest room? When's the last time you chose me over her? The silence stretched between us. Finally, Andrew spoke softly. What do you want from me? I want my husband back. I want you to stand with me at the dinner party when I announce my plans for the community center. I want— A loud crash from downstairs interrupted me. We rushed to the foyer to find the front window shattered, a brick lying among the glass shards. Wrapped around it was a note. Last warning, walk away. Andrew reached for his phone. I'm calling the police. Wait. I picked up the brick, examining the note. This isn't your mother's style. She's more subtle. Then who? Another crash, this time from the back of the house. We ran to the kitchen to find two men in dark clothes, running away through the garden. Andrew bolted after them while I called 911. By the time the police arrived, the men were long gone. The officer took our statement, but I could tell she wasn't optimistic about catching them. This is getting dangerous, Andrew said after they left. Maybe we should reconsider. No, I stood firm. This is exactly why we need to move forward. Whatever your mother's hiding, it's bigger than just a house deed. My phone buzzed, a text from Finn. Found something in the old records. You need to see this ASAP. I'm going to Finn's office, I told Andrew. Are you with me or not? He looked at the broken windows, then at the photo still in his hand. I'll drive. At Finn's office, we found him surrounded by old newspapers and documents. You're not going to believe this, he said, handing me a yellowed article from 1985. The headline read, Local Women's Shelter Director Missing, Foul Play Suspected. Below it was a photo of my grandmother and Ramona standing in front of the house. There's more, Finn said, pulling up more articles. The director was never found, but the last person to see her alive was my mother, Andrew finished, reading over my shoulder. She was working there as a counselor. The case went cold, Finn continued. The shelter closed shortly after, and your grandmother bought it as a private residence. But here's the interesting part. The missing woman's family never stopped looking. In fact, they just filed a new request to reopen the case. My phone buzzed again. Ramona, cancel the dinner party. You have no idea what you're doing. I showed the message to Andrew. His face hardened. "No more secrets," he said. "It's time we knew the truth." I squeezed his hand, feeling hope for the first time in weeks. "The dinner party stands. But first, we need to make one more stop." "Where?" "The police station. I think it's time they heard about those articles. And the brick through our window." The game had changed. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about justice, long buried but never forgotten. The dining room crackled with tension as everyone took their seats. Ramona sat at one end of the table, perfectly composed in her designer outfit, while Andrew and Hallie flanked me at the other end. Two police detectives waited discreetly in the kitchen, ready to intervene if needed. "Lovely dinner party, Sophia," Ramona said, her voice dripping honey. Though I must say, the broken windows add an interesting touch to the decor. "Funny you should mention that." I placed the brick with its threatening note in the center of the table. "Would you know anything about this, Ramona?" She barely glanced at it. "Are you accusing me of vandalism, dear?" "No, I'm accusing you of something much worse." I pulled out the old newspaper articles and spread them across the table. "Let's talk about Patricia Walker." The color drained from Ramona's face. Hallie leaned forward, scanning the headlines. "Who's Patricia Walker?" "The former director of this women's shelter," I said, watching Ramona carefully. "She disappeared in 1985. The last person to see her alive was your mother." "That's enough." Ramona slammed her hand on the table. "You have no right to dredge up ancient history." "Ancient history?" Andrew's voice was quiet but firm. "Mom, there's a family out there who never got closure. They've reopened the case." Ramona's composure cracked. "You don't understand. None of you understand what it was like back then." "Then help us understand," I said. "Because right now, all I see is a woman desperate enough to destroy her son's marriage to keep old secrets buried." "You want the truth?" Ramona's laugh was hollow. "Patricia was going to shut down the shelter. She'd been embezzling funds, threatening the women who stayed here. Your precious grandmother and I tried to stop her, but she was connected to powerful people." "So what happened?" Hallie asked. "She disappeared." Ramona's hand shook as she reached for her water glass. "That's all I know." "Liar." The new voice came from the doorway. An elderly woman stood there, supported by one of the detectives. "You know exactly what happened to my sister." Ramona went rigid. "Margaret." "Hello, Ramona. It's been a long time." Margaret walked slowly to the table. 38 years, to be exact. "The same amount of time I've been looking for answers about Patricia. I told the police everything back then." "You told them lies," Margaret cut in. "But Patricia kept records. Records she mailed to me the day before she disappeared." She pulled out a worn envelope. "Records about you, Ramona. About the money you and Patricia were stealing together." The room went silent. Andrew stared at his mother in disbelief. "Mom?" Ramona's facade finally crumbled. "We needed the money. The shelter was failing, and Patricia had a plan. We'd skim from the donations, just enough to keep things running. But she got greedy, wanted more. When your grandmother found out—" "Found out what?" I pressed. "Martina threatened to expose us. Patricia panicked, said she'd pin it all on me. We argued at the top of the stairs. She fell." Ramona's voice broke. "It was an accident." The detective stepped forward. "Mrs. Murphy, I need you to come with us." "You can't prove anything," Ramona said, but her voice wavered. "Actually, we can." Margaret placed another envelope on the table. "Patricia's body was found during a construction project last week. The forensics match her injuries to a fall, but the rope marks on her wrists suggest it wasn't an accident." Ramona lunged for the door, but the detectives were faster. As they led her away in handcuffs, she turned to Andrew. "Son, please." But Andrew stood by my side, his arm around my waist. "Goodbye, Mom." After the police left, we sat in stunned silence. Margaret stayed, clutching the old photos and crying quietly. "All these years, I never stopped looking for her." "I'm so sorry," I said, reaching for her hand. "About everything." "Don't be." She smiled through her tears. "Your grandmother was the one who helped me keep the investigation alive. She bought this house to preserve evidence." waiting for the right time. And now, Hallie asked. I looked around the table, at my husband, who'd finally chosen truth over loyalty, at my sister-in-law, who'd stood by me, at this stranger who'd helped unlock decades of secrets. Now we honor both our grandmothers' legacies, I said. We turn this place back into what it was meant to be, a sanctuary for women who need help. Andrew squeezed my hand. Together. Together. Later that night, as we cleared the dishes, a text came from Finn. Police found evidence in Ramona's house, linking her to the vandalism. She hired those guys to scare you off. I showed Andrew the message. He shook his head. I can't believe she'd go that far. Can't you? I asked softly. He pulled me close. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. What she was, what she did to us. Outside, the broken windows were boarded up, waiting to be repaired. But inside, something else had been repaired. Something far more important than glass and wood. The renovation crew arrived early, filling the house with the sounds of progress. I stood in the garden, watching as Paisley directed workers through the initial demolition phase. The community center was finally becoming reality. Found something you might want to see, one of the workers called out, waving me over to a partially demolished wall. Inside the cavity was a metal lockbox, covered in decades of dust. My hands trembled as I carefully pried it open. Inside were stacks of letters, all addressed to my grandmother, dated throughout 1985. Sophia, Hallie's voice carried across the yard. She jogged over, coffee cups in hand. What's that? More pieces of the puzzle. I showed her the first letter, written in Patricia's handwriting. Look at the date, 3 days before she disappeared. We sat on the garden bench to read. Dearest Martina, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. Ramona's becoming unstable. The missing money is just the beginning. She's been threatening the women who know about her side business. I have proof, but I need time to get it to Margaret. Watch your back. Patricia. Jesus, Hallie whispered. My mother was running some kind of racket? Before I could respond, Andrew appeared with Finn. The police just called. Mom's talking. How bad is it? I asked. Finn pulled out his notebook. Bad. She wasn't just embezzling. She was blackmailing the women who came to the shelter. Patricia found out and threatened to expose her. The fall wasn't an accident. Ramona pushed her. There's more, Andrew added, his voice tight. She'd been planning to take the house for years. She thought there might still be evidence hidden here. A crash from inside made us all jump. We rushed in to find one of the workers standing over a broken floorboard. Sorry, but you need to see this. Beneath the floorboard was a small safe. The worker helped us extract it, and Finn called the police. Within an hour, detectives were cataloging its contents, financial records, photographs, and a handwritten confession from Patricia detailing Ramona's crimes. This is why she was so desperate to stop the renovation. I realized. She knew we'd find this. Detective Ross nodded. This evidence, combined with her confession, will ensure she serves significant time. As the police packed up the evidence, I found another letter in the lockbox, this one from my grandmother to me. Mi querida Sofia, if you're reading this, you've discovered the truth. I bought this house to protect its secrets until justice could be served. Patricia was my friend, and Ramona betrayed us all. But remember, revenge isn't about destruction. It's about restoration. Make this place what it was meant to be. Con amor, abuela. She knew, I said softly. She knew someday I'd need to know everything. Andrew wrapped his arms around me. What do you want to do now? I watched as Paisley's team continued working, transforming the old house into something new. Exactly what grandmother wanted. We restore, we rebuild, we help others. The media's going to be all over this, Finn warned. Local socialite arrested for decades-old murder, prominent family scandals. Let them come, Hallie said firmly. Maybe it'll help other women recognize abuse and manipulation when they see it. My phone buzzed, a text from Margaret. Thank you for helping find justice for Patricia. The family would like to contribute to your community center. It's what she would have wanted. As if on cue, Iris arrived with a group of community leaders. We heard about Ramona's arrest on the news. Everyone's talking about it and about what you're doing here. We've got volunteers lined up around the block. Perfect timing, Paisley called from the doorway. We just finished the demolition phase, ready to start building something beautiful? I looked at the plans spread across a folding table, classrooms, counseling offices, childcare spaces, and a memorial garden dedicated to Patricia. This wasn't just renovation anymore, it was resurrection. Sophia, Andrew's voice pulled me back. You okay? Better than okay. I squeezed his hand. For the first time, I feel like everything's exactly as it should be. A police car drove past slowly. Extra patrols, making sure there wouldn't be any more accidents during construction. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Ramona's power had always been in her secrets, and now those secrets were exposed to the light. Let's get to work, I said, picking up a hard hat. We've got a lot of healing to do. As we joined the renovation crew, I could almost feel my grandmother's presence, guiding us towards something better than revenge, toward redemption, restoration, and hope. The house's dark history was finally being transformed into a brighter future, one swing of the hammer at a time. 3 months into the renovation, I got the call I'd been dreading. Your mother-in-law wants to see you, Detective Ross said. She's offering a full confession, but she'll only give it to you. Andrew squeezed my hand as we walked into the prison visiting room. Ramona sat there in her orange jumpsuit, her perfectly coiffed hair now showing gray roots. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Sophia, she said quietly. Andrew, thank you for coming. You said you wanted to confess, I replied, keeping my voice steady. So confess. She folded her hands on the table. I saw the news coverage about the community center. You're doing exactly what Patricia wanted to do. What I should have helped her do. Instead of killing her? Andrew's voice cracked. I never meant. Ramona stopped, then started again. No more lies. I knew exactly what I was doing. The money, the threats, all of it. When Patricia confronted me that night, I saw everything I'd built crumbling. So I pushed her, and then I pushed her body down the old well in the basement before they sealed it up. Jesus, Mom. Andrew put his head in his hands. But that's not why I called you here. Ramona leaned forward. Someone's going to try to stop you from opening the center. My former associates. The people who helped me hide everything back then. They've already contacted me. I felt my blood run cold. Is that a threat? A warning? They're planning something for your opening ceremony next week. I don't know exactly what, but the door opened and Finn rushed in. Sophia, we need you at the house, now. What's wrong? Someone broke in. They're holding Paisley and the construction crew hostage. Andrew and I raced to the house, where police had already set up a perimeter. Hallie ran to meet us, her face pale. 3 men with guns. They're demanding all the evidence we found, plus the deed to the house. This is my fault, I whispered. I should have seen this coming. No, Andrew said firmly. This is their fault, and Mom's. But we're going to fix it. Detective Ross approached with her team. Mrs. Murphy gave us names. We've identified the men inside, former business associates of hers who helped cover up Patricia's murder. They've got a lot to lose if all the evidence comes out. Let me talk to them, I said. Absolutely not, Andrew and the detective said simultaneously. Listen to me. They want the deed and evidence. Fine, but what they don't know is that everything's already been digitized and sent to every news outlet in the state. Finn? Finn nodded, holding up his phone. One press of this button, and the whole story goes live. Every dirty secret, every criminal connection. I'll tell them they can have the physical evidence, I continued, but only if they let everyone go. The moment they're out, Finn releases everything anyway. Detective Ross considered it. We'll have snipers in position, just in case. Inside, I could see Paisley and the workers huddled in the main room. 3 armed men pacing around them. I picked up the bullhorn. I have what you want, I called out. Let's talk. The next few minutes were a blur of negotiation. The men demanded proof. I had the documents. I showed them through the window. They wanted the deed. I held it up. Release them first, I said firmly. Then you get everything. One by one, the hostages walked out. Paisley was last, her hands shaking but her head held high. The moment they were clear, I gave Finn the signal. Now, Detective Ross shouted. Everything happened at once. Police stormed in from every entrance. The men, realizing they were surrounded, dropped their weapons. As they were let out in handcuffs, I heard one of them shout, "Ramona set us up." Later, after the chaos had died down, we gathered in the garden. The construction crew, shaken but determined, insisted on getting back to work. Opening ceremonies still on for next week, Paisley announced, checking her tablet. Nothing's stopping us now. They tried to scare us away, Hallie said, but they just made us stronger. I looked around at our makeshift family. Andrew, finally free from his mother's manipulation. Hallie, stronger than she ever knew. Finn, Paisley, and all the others who'd become part of this journey. Patricia would be proud, Margaret said, joining us with tears in her eyes. This place is finally becoming what she dreamed it could be. As the sun set, we watched the workers install the new sign, the Patricia Walker Center for Women's Empowerment. Ready for next week? Andrew asked softly. I smiled, thinking of how far we'd come. More than ready. It's time to open these doors and never close them again. The house stood tall against the darkening sky, no longer haunted by its past, but filled with the promise of tomorrow. The morning of the opening ceremony dawned bright and clear. I stood in my grandmother's garden, now the Patricia Walker Memorial Garden, watching volunteers set up chairs and hang banners. The press is already lining up outside, Hallie said, joining me with 2 coffee cups. And look who else is here. A group of women walked through the garden gates, led by Margaret. I recognized them immediately from the old shelter photos. Former residents, coming back to reclaim their space. We wouldn't miss this, one of them said, hugging me tight. Patricia and your grandmother helped us rebuild our lives. Now you're doing the same for a new generation. Andrew appeared with the final inspection paperwork. Everything's approved. We're officially open for business. Inside, the transformation was complete. The old parlor was now a sunny welcome center. The kitchen expanded into a training cafe, and upstairs, classroom spaces waited for their first students. Photos of Patricia and my grandmother hung in the entrance hall, watching over it all. Sophia, Finn called from the office. There's someone here to see you. I walked in to find a young woman clutching a duffel bag, eyes darting nervously. I saw the news coverage about this place, about what happened here. Come in, I said softly. What's your name? Marie, my husband. She twisted her wedding ring. I need help. Then you're in exactly the right place. I gestured to Iris, who'd been trained for exactly this moment. This is what we're here for. As Iris led Marie to the counseling room, I heard commotion outside. The ceremony was about to begin. Hundreds of people filled the gardens. Community members, supporters, media, and most importantly, women ready to start new lives. I took my place at the podium, looking out at the crowd. 38 years ago, 2 women had a dream for this house. They wanted it to be a place of transformation, where broken lives could be rebuilt. One of those women was murdered for trying to protect that dream. The other, my grandmother, spent decades making sure the truth would eventually come to light. Margaret stood beside me, holding Patricia's photo. Today, we honor their legacy, but more than that, we continue their work. This center isn't just about the past. It's about the future we're building together. Andrew joined us, holding a small wooden box. In this box are the keys to the center, but they're more than just keys. They're symbols of the strength it takes to unlock a new beginning. I opened the box and handed the first key to Marie, who'd come outside with Iris. This is your key. Not just to this building, but to your own future. One by one, women came forward to receive their keys. Former shelter residents, new clients, community volunteers, each key representing a story, a possibility, a chance to break free. As the ceremony concluded, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Detective Ross stood there with an envelope. "This just came from the prison. Ramona wanted you to have it." Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Sophia, I spent my life trying to bury the truth. You spent yours bringing it to light. I was wrong about everything. The house, Patricia, you. I'll spend the rest of my days trying to make amends, starting with this. Enclosed is my confession to every crime I committed, and every name of those who helped me. Use it to protect what you've built. Ramona." Andrew read it over my shoulder. She finally did the right thing. "Better late than never," I said, watching Marie talk with Iris and other support staff. "Look, the center's already changing lives." Hallie joined us grinning. "Wait until you see this. The governor just announced a statewide initiative to fund centers like ours. We're the model program." In the garden, Margaret was sharing stories with the former residents, while Paisley showed visitors the renovation photos. Finn discussed legal aid programs with local attorneys, and everywhere I looked, women were connecting, supporting, healing. "Your grandmother would be proud," Andrew said, squeezing my hand. "You turned her act of protection into something amazing." "We all did," I corrected him. "Every person here played a part in making this happen." As the sun set on our opening day, I walked through the house one last time, not as a battlefield where Ramona's secrets had finally been exposed, but as a sanctuary where new stories would begin. In the Welcome Center, Marie was helping another woman fill out intake forms. She looked up and smiled, a small smile, but real. The kind of smile that said she was ready to write her own story. That's when I knew this wasn't just revenge served cold. This was redemption served with hope, healing, and the promise of tomorrow. My grandmother and Patricia's dream hadn't died. It had just been waiting for the right moment to bloom.